Hello!
That never gets old.
Look in the chat. He's like, it gets very old. It is old already. It is so old. Oh my god. The Vent du Nord. Merci. Merrick in the chat on Monday suggested Vent du Nord, and that's great. We had some Boitine Souriant queued up, but since Boitine doesn't exist anymore, I don't believe Vent du Nord.
It is
pretty
now.
Darn good.
Well done. Thank you
Merci
for the
beaucoup.
suggestion. Okay. Thank you all for joining us. There's still some folks coming in. That's totally fine. We won't get started until more arrive.
We've got a quiz off the top.
We're gonna start with the most important quiz of
it's on the final
this semester. It's on the final. You want
which we don't have. I mean, there is no final, so sure, it's on it.
Sure.
If you could imagine a final,
this would be
the only question.
Okay, so get ready for a poll, and I'm going to thank you all for your participation.
Yes,
in
appreciate
the elephant.
Appreciate the elephant.
It's beautiful.
Pachyderm appreciation.
Oh, okay, delete, and the most important question
will now be shared.
Go ahead.
There's not a lot of calm reflection going on, I note, in the rate at which you're answering. I'd say most of you are not thinking very clearly about this.
It's a big decision that requires...
It is a big decision.
It is.
Caramel is not in this quiz.
100% of you have answered. That's the first time this whole semester.
It's not yet.
Oh, wait. No. Almost. No. Okay. Not yet. But most of you have the highest response rate of the semester. Yeah. Amazing. I win.
Now, hold on. There may be some calm reflection has occurred in the chat.
Oh, why is this even a question?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, so no.
No calm reflection. Okay. Yeah. Good. We're almost, I think the incoming folks here are slowing down a little bit, so I think we're almost here and we can probably get onto some serious stuff, but thank you.
Oh, Theo.
Oh, Theo. Isn't he cute? He's fun. Yeah.
We will, so what we take from this is we will ask Caramel.
No, we will just invite Theo over.
We will invite him and ask Caramel.
Yeah. Good. Wonderful. He comes with the box because he really likes the box.
Hashtag give Theo tenure.
That's funny.
No, Theo has to earn tenure. That's kind of how tenure works. It's very good.
That's very good. Okay. Thank you all. And, some folks still coming in. Welcome. Oh, it's slowing down. Good.
What do you call 5 ants that live with 5 ants?
5 ant couples?
Tenants.
Tenants? Oh, wow. That's really bad. Okay.
What would Theo research? I think how to live in this madhouse.
Yeah, it's a busy house. Okay. Great. Ready? End poll. 92% of you clicked in, and I think the rest of you wrote on here, so well done. Good. Okay. Here, if you want to share results, go ahead and take a look. Very much in favor of bringing Theo home.
All right, so if it doesn't work, we'll come and find each and every one of you.
If it doesn't work out, we're hoping that one of you will take him. We'll let you know.
Caramel will be messaging you.
Yeah. She'll be like, get this cat out of here. Theo's 3 years old, and he is, so if you're interested, he is one of the University of Guelph research animals. He's been involved in nutrition studies by a friend of mine, Dr. Shoveler, who's fantastic. If you're at all interested in nutrition, check her out and check out her research program. And Theo is 3, and he's ready to be rehomed. And he is a healthy, happy boy, and we're very excited to welcome him. Thank you for deciding for us. And there are other animals that are available to be adopted or rehomed from research programs. So the veterinary college has a whole bunch of dogs, for example, that they use to train future veterinarians. and they need to be walked. So you don't have to adopt them if your life just doesn't, allow for that. They are looking for dog walkers, and all sorts of things. So if you're at all interested in that for your own health as well as theirs.
And there's also one of your colleagues in the chat has mentioned that there are kittens at their workplace that are up for adoption right now. So you can probably communicate right there.
Yeah.
And somebody had asked about Dr. Shoveler's profile or their research, so I'm going to paste that in the chat.
Yeah, wonderful.
Momentarily.
Good. Yeah, Anna Kate Shoveler, like brilliant scientist, and a good friend. So totally. And she'll be like, "Why are so many students writing to me to volunteer?" I'll be like, "'Cause you're awesome."
We have released the 1070.
Yeah. Anyway, so if you're at all interested in certain topics and you want to know who you should get in touch with and blah blah, let us know. We can totally do shout outs to cool people. Okay. And shall we, in all seriousness?
I have previously indicated yes. I have thought about it. Unlike you guys, I've calmly reflected. I retain yes. Now, there was also some discussion about what you were calling, I think, judgmentally, the 3%ers in the chat. Some people don't like cats. That's fine. Some people are allergic to cats. You don't like to be like having your histamine response all the time.
Look at Theo has eyebrows.
Theo is judging you. No, there's no judgment. There's no judgment.
The 3%ers. Oh my goodness. That's a really good Netflix show. Okay. Okay. So today. Oh no, we have to go back. There we go. Okay.
Ça c'est Monsieur Theo.
Monsieur Theo. Folks still coming in. I guess today was a busy day. Welcome. Let's get started.
So we're going to talk about these things in the form of birds and fish.
Yeah.
And trees.
How do you feel about that?
Birds and fish and trees.
Oh my.
Birds
okay,
and fish
but first,
and trees. Oh my.
If you want to check to see how you're doing on your homework, so you've either done it or you haven't. It's fine. But if you want to just do a quick little check, just because we want to sort of like, basically just signal what's important, right? So by having this question, you will then be reminded, oh yeah, I should do my homework. If you didn't do your homework, just click E and move on, but make sure you do it eventually. But for those that have done their homework, just take out the numbers and you should be able to find the answer quickly.
I see. Thank you, in Green 12. A lot of people were writing a Bio 1080 midterm before this.
Oh.
So as you're writing this, as you're looking at this, like give yourself a shoulder massage or a hand massage, like massage your hands, do some self-care. You're done, because you're done.
You're done.
It's
How
done.
did it go? Was it okay? I don't know much about what's going on in 1080 these days, so tell us.
Birds and fish are great. Trees are okay, I guess.
Oh, jeez.
Now, I do like oxygen.
Yeah.
A lot.
I value it. Good.
I'm pro-oxygen. Pro-O.
Yeah.
2.
Yeah.
Pro-O. 2. I was like, oh, they've really... Oh, I see.
Yeah. No. It's okay. It's okay. Lots of you have not done your homework. Totally fine. It will be fine. What is the answer to this one? I always forget. Brownswood has a lot of that.
I think they've everyone has shown you what the answer is. Right?
Well, I know what the answer is according to the class, but I think it's... Okay. When in doubt, say B. Okay.
No, that's no. No. That what? No. Back up that.
Okay. Should we end the poll? 75%?
76%.
Here we go.
I want to get to 77.
Okay, so the vast majority haven't done it yet, and
Share on the
that's
screen.
totally fine. But just to give you a little sort of, thing, because this is, except for E, kind of similar to a possible question that might come at you in the future that will be graded massive Easter egg. So if you want, please go ahead and do your homework. and make sure that you understand don't memorize formulas, but understand what these concepts are and what that might look like in the data and how these things move, right? Good.
So the answer, it is B.
It is B.
In this one.
Yeah, good. Okay.
And I believe that was class 8 that question was asked. So it was a while ago.
It was a little while ago. Yeah, but then we had a mid
Yeah, but take a look at your slides.
Yeah.
Because remember, as we put these out there, we're not collecting these answers. There's no marking about this. We're just like throwing them up as examples of how we would ask questions in the topic test.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So, Menti, www.menti.com. We've got a question for you. Here we go. I think we're done with polling. Question for you. Why isn't a species here? So imagine you go to a place and you don't see a species. Why? What are some of the reasons why it might not be there? And I want you to just think about like not just one, but like a whole bunch.
So you've arrived in the dairy bush.
Yeah.
And you don't see any polar bears.
Right. Why are polar bears not in the dairy bush?
Stressful 1080.
Yeah.
Not the worst, but stressful.
Oh, okay. Good. You're doing great. Very, 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 very good. Nice. Nice. I like this one too. You're doing great. Keep on going. Nice. Ha!
That's great.
That's
I like that.
great.
That's the first time I've seen that one pop up.
Yeah.
I like
That's awesome.
Sorry. Dude.
Okay. Good. Okay, we have some really, really good ones. Hit us with ridiculous ones so that we can laugh. Good, 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 good. We'll share them with you in about 15 seconds.
That doesn't sound about. That sounds precisely.
Precisely 15 seconds. Good. Oh, this is great. Perfect segue. Okay, here we go. Back up to the top. Wonderful. Very, very, very well done. So there's some really good ones here. It may not be endemic to the area. Maybe an invasive species came and kicked it out. Predation, wrong habitat, climatic conditions, not ideal. Temperature, habitat unfit. Really good. Needs specific environmental space, not well suited. Predators, diet, prey, weather, topography, temperature, good. Abiotic factors, human, yes. All of these are all great. It was there, but it's extinct now. Amazing. Oh, this one we love. You can't see them. They are there, but you can't see them. So
That's
good.
awesome. That speaks to biases of size, that we're much more likely to see polar bears if they're around, but less likely to see Apantales microgastrine parasitoid wasps if they're around because they're really tiny.
Because ew?
No. Oh, no.
Okay.
Boo. But it also speaks to what we talked about last in terms of the sampling curve. That asymptote in terms of, well, if you show up one time, you see this many things. Are you done? It's like, chances are no.
Oh, nice. No polar bears in the dairy bush because there are no seals in the dairy bush.
You must consult the history of Guelph to appreciate the beauty of that answer, because in the Arboretum, there used to be seals and polar bear.
For reals. Yeah.
Not many. And it's not, we're not even talking like a lost smoke monster kind of a thing.
Yeah.
They were there.
There was a good one.
I like the fact, so as you're looking for it, I like the fact that what you're seeing here, it started out kind of thinking about abiotic factors, which is great and oftentimes will be appropriate.
Yep.
And then some of you started throwing out some time related, so like evolution,
Yep.
maybe it was there, randomness, maybe there was something that removed it, and also the sampling, that maybe it's there and you just didn't see it.
That's right.
That phrase is a great one.
The vibes were off. Love it. Okay.
That's the Goldilocks factor.
Killed off. Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. Well done. Thank you. Again, really good.
Was it a zoo? Sasquatch. Kind of a zoo. Yep, there was some people who were doing, unfortunately for the animales,
some research.
physiology on. But the bear, if you stay in, where do they show it? There's an upper year course. Anyhow, when the bear eventually died, the department has the skin, so you can see this giant hide.
Yeah. Okay. So I think all of the things have been captured in your responses. So well done, you. You can say a species isn't here because it was here and it died out. You can say that it isn't here because it can't live here. It could live here, but it just never got there. That might be one that was missing from your list. So it technically could, but it just never dispersed.
Yeah.
Which I mean, there's lots of things that you've got there. So maybe you wrote it, and if you did, great. Yeah. It could live here, but other species are keeping it away, and that is definitely represented in your answers.
Character displacement. I love it.
Yeah. So these are all different sort of explanations or different histories. And what we want you to do is to think about how could you figure out which one is which for a particular scenario or a particular kind of observation that you made. Okay. So for example, if it was extirpated, what would you expect to see? Like what supporting evidence would you be able to collect that would allow you to conclude that there was an extirpation?
So sometimes people use the analogy of rewinding the tape. That's kind of a dated analogy now because like what kind of a tape are we talking about? Yeah. But it's like, so taking the scroll bar, going back, or using the back 15 on your Crave or your Netflix view to rewatch it.
Yeah.
We can't do that often with ecological or evolutionary experiments. So
what
other indirect ways are you going to ask these questions? What evidence would you like to see to support any particular hypothesis?
Good. Cool. So some of you have already mentioned this word right here.
I would also like to shout out that if any of you are forming bands, Fundamental and the Realized Niche would be like, Fundamental would be a great stage name, especially if you, like big voice, big pipes. So Fundamental and the Realized Niche, we would go and see that.
Okay. So niche. We're going to talk about niche, and niche is like
quiche.
Like biomes in that we're not quite sure what they are, but we think we do, and we keep on practicing. And so, look at this. There are multiple definitions and multiple ways of using them and multiple scales and all of these things. So when we talk about the word niche, we often have to start by qualifying it by saying this is what we're talking about. It's really important.
It's multi-dimensional, right? Like it could refer to the type of Cheerios that you're eating in the morning, and that with your roommates you don't overlap. You have different brands of cereal that you eat in the morning. But I think the one thing we can all agree on, and that you must go out into the world and proselytize, is that this does not rhyme with itch. It rhymes with quiche. In the Excited States of America, they teach students that this word rhymes with itch, and I'm not even going to say it because it just makes my gag response.
Okay, so what we want to do is we want to kind of tie these concepts to things that we've already been doing. So one of the things that we can do is understand a little bit about the factors that explain why species are where they are and are not where they're not. And so we've talked a little bit in the previous class about abiotic factors, really sort of at higher levels, talking about them with respect to defining the biomes, right? When we said that temperature and precipitation were like the only variables that we need in order to describe or distinguish one biome from another. And there are some more abiotic factors there, and you've mentioned them as well in your list this morning. So the abiotic conditions, they really help us understand where a species could live, okay? Because if those conditions don't match up with the tolerance ranges, then it doesn't matter what else is there, it just couldn't survive there. So physiologically, the abiotic conditions allow us to understand where they could live. And that ties into the concept of what's called a fundamental niche, okay? So it has more to do with these sort of tolerance ranges to the abiotic conditions. And then we can look at it on a graph, because graphs are fun.
Can I throw up, just if you go back for 2 seconds, I don't remember if it was there.
Yeah.
But we did mention on Monday that there's a terrestrial bias to some of what we're talking about, but there's lots of applicability and sometimes interesting similarity and differences in an aquatic or a marine environment. When we're talking about these niches, if you're a marine and freshwater major and you're like, I really want a marine example, salinity.
Yeah.
Think about salinity.
Okay. So what we can do then to understand where the fundamental niche is of a species is take a look at the tolerance ranges of the different species relative to those abiotic factors, right? So we can put the abiotic factor from low to high on the x-axis, and we can take a look at the number of individuals that can survive within those ranges. And usually what we see is this normal distribution, this curve, right? Where at the top is kind of like the optimal, range of that abiotic factor.
So if you're thinking temperature, perhaps on the x-axis from low to high, salinity from low to high.
Good. But
there's more.
There's more, because
multi-dimensional
environments
space.
don't usually have like one thing.
Can you think of one? Like just a super uniform.
Like in a petri dish,
yeah.
Not even.
Yeah.
Right? Like, how do you just get one in a petri dish?
So in a petri dish, you could do it with, you could make like one with an antibiotic and one without.
Yeah.
That you could make a.
Yeah, but there are other things going on. There's like air and So no.
So.
Yeah. So let's just imagine there are three, and there aren't three because. Yeah. That's just way too simple too. But what we want to do is kind of just show you how that might look in terms of fundamental niche on a graph. Okay, so imagine we have environmental factor 1, 2, and 3. So think about pH, salinity, and oxygen, right? Concentration.
We're going whole hog in the aquatic environment.
Okay. So this could be a species' fundamental niche, right? Its tolerance ranges relative to these three variables, where we can take a look at the range for environmental factor 1 from here to here, and then environmental factor 2 or 3, 3 from here to here, large, and then variable 2 from there to there, also small, okay? And that then represents in three-dimensional space the fundamental niche of the species. And, of course, there are always more than that. Humans suck at things that are more than 3 dimensions, right? It's really hard for us. And so it becomes a little bit more challenging
we
to
develop
represent that.
Lots of statistical and visualization techniques to kind of group all of those multi-dimensional n dimensions back down to 2 or 3 to be like, okay, all of these things are kind of mostly like this, and these things are mostly like that, and that's kind of exciting bits of statistical visualization.
Super fun. Okay, and it's not only about the abiotic. It's also about the biotic, which you totally rightfully identified today in your big long list of things, right? There's competition, there's diet, there's all of these other things that are related more to biotic variables. And here are some of them. Okay.
I like the bottom ones the best. If you've got other ones that you think are...
Yeah, put more.
Put them in here.
Yeah. So while we're talking about, so that's abiotic and fundamental niche. Let's move on to the biotic and understand a little bit about what biotic might look like. Okay, and we're going to do that in the context of a story about a little fish. So we're going to look at Peaceful John's fundamental niche. So if we put on one axis of this gray space, right, we can do what?
We could have set this up with Caramel and Theo.
Oh, we totally could have. But anyway, so let's say here is pH on the y-axis, and here is temperature. And there are only two variables that matter to Peaceful John in terms of Peaceful John's fundamental niche.
There's some love for Peaceful John in the
Yay,
chat.
thank you. Okay, good. So Peaceful John can occupy the blue space, okay? And as long as the fishbowl remains within that space of pH and temperature, Peaceful John is happy, right? So basically, everything's all good as long as you change your water and make sure that it is healthy, okay? John billed my parents. Filled? Okay. I don't know. Killed!
Oh, you'll see who did in a second.
Right, okay. So, here we go. So Peaceful John is happy within the fundamental niche. Everything is great. Abiotic conditions are the only things that matter.
And so just a reiteration before we go on is that square is niche space, right?
Right.
Not the tank.
Yes.
Sometimes people look at that and they're like, what are you talking about? You can only be in a little part of the tank? It's like, no. It's just, that just describes the conditions in that tank.
That's right. And as long as the tank conditions remain within that niche space,
yeah,
we're all good, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good. Next, imagine that we introduce badass fish
Bum, bum, bum.
to the tank. Okay? And this totally changes it. He was framed. Sorry. Okay. So this totally changes the situation. This is the introduction of a biotic factor that then messes around with the niche space. Okay? So badass fish is badass and is a competitor of for something with Peaceful John. Okay? So Peaceful John now retreats to the little house, and that's where Peaceful John stays because badass fish is occupying the rest of that space. Okay.
He's smoking.
He's smoking. Okay. So potentially John can still occupy that fundamental niche. The fundamental niche does not change. Okay. But what changes is the portion of that niche space that John occupies. And we call that the realized niche. Okay. So there's a difference. Fundamental niche is pretty fixed. Realized niche can change with the context, with the realization of what's going around. Okay? Now.
So Peaceful John committed tax evasion. We observed that Peaceful John is there for Shakira, and Peaceful John's hips don't lie.
Amazing. Okay. Good. So let's summarize. Okay? So abiotic, biotic factors, and these are like big trends and if you're thinking, what about blah, 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 then awesome. You found an exception and use it to understand the general trends, right? Okay. So what about fundamental niche? Usually linked to the abiotic ranges of things for species, and they don't change, right? So one species' fundamental niche is very much part of its species description, right? Its tolerance ranges. Whereas realized niche can be very different for individuals or different populations depending upon the context, okay? So the fundamental niche could be the same, but the realized or the contextual sort of ecological pressures that are going on, more usually related to biotic factors, create the actual range. You're having a good time?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I love it. I love this fish drawing here. They found Nemo.
I found Nemo. Yep.
Okay.
And also there's some hope that they realize that they're not so different after all. That's what we were laughing at. Aww. The real fish were the friends we met along the way.
So what can happen then in the context of introducing Peaceful John or introducing a biotic factor into an ecological situation? Many things can happen. Right? So your brainstorming here originally on the Menti was excellent because there are many possible responses, not only just explanations, but responses in the introduction of, say, an invasive species like badass fish. Here are three. So the first one is competitive exclusion. Okay, so Peaceful John can peace out, basically. It just means that the population, and obviously not just like one fish, but like the population in the context of being invaded by another species leaves. Okay, so there's a range shift there. Not an expansion, but a range shift. Okay. The other way of competitive exclusion is to be extirpated. So it goes extinct in that area. Okay, so there's a range shift or there's an extinction event. Number 2 would be character displacement. And some of you have already mentioned that this morning, which is amazing, where both species continue to occupy the same fundamental niche or the same habitat, but there's a displacement of a character. So basically trait displacement. So something happens to reduce competition such that they can continue to survive and thrive in the same space. An example might be that Peaceful John, over evolutionary time, right, not just the individual, becomes nocturnal, and Badass Fish remains a diurnal species surviving in the sunshine, and Peaceful John becomes like a little sort of my precious little kind of fish that like occupies a cave and only comes out at night.
I always maybe you guys are all thinking about roommate experiences while you're doing this, but it's
yeah.
These are strategies.
These are strategies, totally.
And some of you in the chat, when you were talking about, well, I hope they both can get along and realize that the real fish were the friends they met along the way. That's the third one, that you could, sure, perhaps coexistence happens, it's just at a reduced carrying capacity.
That's right. So reduced carrying capacity means lower numbers, right? The population size is reduced, so there are fewer Peaceful Johns, but they're still there, and they're figuring things out peacefully. Okay, good.
Because conflict is expensive.
It really is.
It is expensive energetically.
Yeah.
It can be expensive reproductively.
Okay, so some of you are wondering a little bit about, sort of the types of questions we write. You went through the topic test 1 and all congratulations, everything's going to be okay. And so, but what we wanted to do is kind of give you an example of like not the types of questions that we ask. And so here's one. Here's not the type of question that we ask. And I will throw it at you right now. There we go. What type of response is this? This is a good question, like for a quiz or for like, just because we just kind of like went through this stuff right away. So we don't expect you to be able to learn how to apply it. So let's just see if you remember. If Badass Fish moves into Peaceful John territory and over time, Peaceful John becomes nocturnal, which type of a response is this?
Some great questions, extension questions. Did the asteroid affect the dinosaurs' fundamental niche? And some hypotheses that they just kind of died if it was bad luck. And I think if they were in that crater, yes, that was just bad luck.
Yeah.
But then we also think that the asteroid, the secondary effect of the asteroid was radical changes to temperature and sunlight.
That's right.
And then to plant life. And so those would have altered the fundamental niche for the conditions.
The conditions.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't have changed the fundamental niche of the species. It just would have taken that. It just would have
the tank would not be there anymore.
Changed the range of available spaces that those individuals could occupy.
Yeah. It would have wily coyoted. Their niche would have been there, in here, and then whoop.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Okay. Good. So most of you have clicked in correctly. Well done. I'm going to end the poll and share the results. So it is character displacement. Again, don't worry if you didn't get it because we just did it. And you can always go back into the slides when you're doing a topic test. But this question is just a little like not applied, right? It's just testing whether or not you remember. So it would be more of a quiz question. But we wanted to just kind of throw it at you there. And so there we go. It is character displacement. Good.
Yeah. And look at these two lovely, happy people.
Yeah.
Those are kind faces. There's Rosemary and Peter Grant. And Rosemary and Peter Grant, who are dressed up in their finest because they were receiving a co-award together at this day, are researchers bird researchers. They're bird brains. And they used to work in Canada, both at Trent and McGill, and then they were hired away by institutions in the Excited States of America, and they had amazing, long, and influential careers. And in one of the ways that they have influenced ecology and evolution is in the importance of mechanisms like character displacement to ecology, coexistence, competitive exclusion, and to evolution, to changes in time. So they worked for a long time, and we'll tell you about a book where you can dive into this in a second,
really cool.
like a popular press book by a guy named Jonathan Weiner, if you haven't read it, called The Beak of the Finch. There's a link that'll be in the PDF later on, where they break down the story that they left studying some bird species and islands off the coast of Mexico for some strange administrative reasons, and they had this opportunity to go and work way off, kind of in a triangle off south of Costa Rica and west of Ecuador in the Galapagos Islands. And they started looking at different islands and seeing that there were these finches in a genus that is on the mainland, but they were seeing kind of really interesting distributions, just kind of like Lack and like Darwin had seen in years before. So they noticed that in little tiny, for example, Daphne major here, they only saw Geofortis. Fortis, strong, crunch. I crush you. It's a crushing. I crush your head, Lily. I crush it. I crush it. Big bill. A bill for crushing and opening big seeds. And then at Los Hermanos, this other little island here, there was Fulginosa, which is a much narrower kind of maybe a prying or a seed. It's a different bill structure in the same genus, Geospiza. That's the G at the front. And then, interestingly, they had one island, Santa Cruz, where they both lived. So this is kind of a natural experiment that they started to take measurements of each of these things. And what they found was that in Daphne major, the bill measurements of Geofortis looked like that purple histogram up at the top. They were big. They were very big, biased towards roughly normal, but say biased towards being bigger. On Los Hermanos, they were smaller. They were kind of, 9, as you can see, 9 increments, 9 centimeters was included both, yeah. But they were on the smaller side. And then at Santa Cruz, this was kind of the neat thing and the real clear demonstration. They separated. The big ones got bigger, the small ones were smaller. And when I say got, that's not them kind of looking around and going, ugh! Natural selection through time had produced, had operated on this existing variability to select for bigger things.
Yeah.
Or smaller things. Now, yeah. I have not been to the Galapagos. I've been to Costa Rica, I've been to Ecuador, and I've not been to the Galapagos. Lily, you have not been to the Galapagos.
No.
Dr. Jacobs, have you been to the Galapagos?
I have. It was really cool. I got paid to go there. I was asked to scout out the Galapagos and Ecuador for a expedition adventure travel company and give them a full report. So I got to go around for a few weeks and do all of the fun things, including go to the Galapagos, which blew my mind. Sailing by some of these islands, having read the book and knowing all of that stuff. Sam is correcting new information, going, not finches, tanagers.
Oh, yeah.
But they are called Darwin's finches, so there you go.
And yes, it was Adventure Canada, wasn't it?
No. No, you might be. No. What company was it? I forget.
People were just throwing in money at you. Take me
my
places.
Money. Yeah.
Take me places, Dr. Jacobs.
Yeah, it was good.
Did you see the marine iguanas?
Uh-huh.
Take Lily to the Galapagos and leave her.
Leave her.
No, they didn't say that.
You said that. Okay.
Really, I didn't mean it.
Yeah. Anyway, if you do have an opportunity to go, it will blow your mind. Good. Okay. Amazing book. The Beak of the Finch. Sorry, Sam. Really good book. Tells the story of the two researchers and their amazing discoveries and all of that stuff. And totally super fun to read. Sam's, what are we going on? Okay, our tanagers, the beak of the tanagers. Good. Good. Okay. How would you determine the abiotic factors if the abiotic factors are limiting the distribution of a species? So now we're going to try to like jump into the science, right? How can we study these things? Which of them are limiting and which ones are not, and how might that change over time? Okay. So we can do field observations of actual range of distribution. So that's the realized situation, but we can do it extensively in order to start to understand which abiotic factors might be limiting. We could determine the ecological tolerances. You look at correlations between environmental gradients and a species optimum range. We could do experiments. So we could do field transplants, or we could do a controlled environment experiment.
We're speaking to each other.
Yeah, okay. Do you want to speak to this slide?
Yeah, I love the last one because essentially there's, I have connection to the last one because that's lots of what we do in my lab at very small geographic scales within elevational gradients in Costa Rica. And it's a lot of fun when you can do it.
Yeah.
Over a continental scale, we looked last time, you remember, we talked about the size of different hemlock versus acer maple, not spores, what's the word? Pollen. And we looked at the recolonization kind of roots and rates of those two things. Well, here's another look at kind of a Peterson guidebook style, like a paint smear of the paint tipped over and it's kind of filled in on that space for sugar maple. And then there's some spatters over there.
That's right.
So if we look at that, go ahead.
Go. Yeah. So if we look at that, what we can do is we can start to apply what we know about the abiotic factors on this map. And one of the things that works quite nicely is that if on the west coast of the continent, these are areas that that usually have higher than 24 degrees Celsius in the summer. And then for the east and northern part that sets that range, we have winter temperatures that are usually colder than minus 18 degrees Celsius. And if we just use those parameters, that range of temperature, we can largely explain the distribution of sugar maple.
And so this is, I called it the Peterson guidebook style, like a paint smear or something that's fallen, tipped over. It's your beer kind of soaking up into a napkin. But is the real world like this? Like if you're going to go down to Lake Erie and drive around on the north shore of Lake Erie in here, is there going to be a line? Are you going to be whipping up the 401 and be like, ha-ha, ho-ho,
yeah,
go backwards, ha-ha, ho-ho? I mean, no. There are sometimes hard boundaries like that, like a shoreline in the ocean. But
where the water stops.
That's right.
Yeah.
But often, the thing that you see from back here, and you're like, oh, so clear. And you're like, let's move in. Oh.
Move in.
Pretty clear.
Move in.
Oh. Hold on. Not so clear.
Same thing.
So rarely it's a defined line, but they're fuzzy transitional zones where it depends becomes much more esoteric or elegant, and history becomes a thing. But it's not as simple as like no, yes, and no. It's not Aristotelian. It's fuzzy.
Fuzzy borders. So one thing that we can do to try to understand a little bit more about those fuzzy borders and some of the biotic factors.
That's my fuzzy border.
Some of the biotic factors that can explain the fuzziness is to do a transplant experiment. So now we're dealing with plants, right? With trees. But basically what we can do is we can take a look at the actual range of a species of tree or plant, say, and then we can transplant some of them again within the actual range and some of them outside of the range to basically ask, can they survive outside of this range? So is their actual range really the result of these biotic factors, the realized niche, or is it also occupying all of its fundamental niche, right? And we can start to kind of weed out some of these questions. We would transplant within the actual range here in order to...
Let's ask them. Why do we do that?
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead. So why would we're really running out of time, that's why. So why would we transplant within the actual range as well?
From that bright green triangle. Why would we transplant within the actual range?
Good.
That's Welsh 01. Control. Yeah, it's telling us, is the actual act of us doing the experiment negatively affecting the species?
Right.
Are we not good tree transplanters?
That's right. Because if your species can't tolerate being transplanted, then you transplanting them outside of the range is just going to tell you that they don't like to be transplanted and not about what the range is outside, right, of that actual range. Okay, so this is a kind of a classic study. It's a classic ecological study that we use. And from it, we can take a look at percent survival, right? So imagine that 100% survive within the actual range. So transplanting is not a problem for the individuals. We can then start to ask questions about why, for example, tree line is where tree line is on these elevational gradients.
Tree line is where tree line
is. So a real study done by these people here where they did a transplant study and they had...
Geronimo! Smith.
They had 3 treatments. The first one was underneath a herbaceous canopy. So it was basically shaded and there was competition for water with another species. We have on bare soil, so not shaded and no competition. And we had on bare soil surrounded by the canopy. So lots of light, but there was competition for water. So some biotic factors, some abiotic factors, and this nice little elegant combination so that they could help identify which ones were the more important ones. What we're going to do is we're going to leave you with some homework, because imagine they did one experiment and these are the data on the left-hand side. And then imagine they did another experiment and these are the data on the right-hand side. What we'd love for you to do is to take some time to see if you can figure out what the overall conclusions are from each of these experiments. So, think about a little bit, why the 3 treatments, which ones would I compare in order to be able to understand the effect of each of these variables, the availability of light versus the competition for water. And then which one in this experiment is the most important factor in determining the survival rate? Is that, yeah? Okay, cool. And we're going to follow up with a question for you for the next class, just to make sure that you're, able to check whether you're kind of working through these in a logical order.
And I thought there was an interesting question in the chat about the transplant aspect of these kinds of experiments. Couldn't you be then the source of an invasion? It's like, you could. So when you design these kinds of experiments, you design them so that they are strictly controlled, not a scientific control, but they are controlled such that if there's an escape, alarms go off.
Yeah.
It's like that. Our control.
Our control. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Okay.
Yeah, it's Wednesday, so it's weird to say have a great week, but have a great week.
Have a great week.
Take care of yourself. Take care of each other.
Yeah.